She sees it happen from behind a tree line. A man from her camp, crouched at the edge of another family's stores, slipping dried meat into a fold of his cloak when he thinks no one's watching. She doesn't confront him. She doesn't even move. She just watches, remembers, and walks back to camp a different way than he did. By nightfall, 3 people already know. By the next morning, so does almost everyone. Nobody held a trial. Nobody raised a hand against him. And yet, within a day, the way this man moves through his own camp has changed completely. Fewer people offering him a share of the hunt. Fewer conversations that used to include him without a second thought. He wasn't punished. He was simply known. And knowing, it turns out, might be one of the oldest weapons our species ever built. We call this gossip today. Roll our eyes at it. Half apologize before we do it ourselves. But here's a number worth sitting with. Some researchers estimate that roughly 2/3 of everyday human conversation, once you strip out the small talk about weather and traffic, comes down to exactly what that woman was doing behind the tree line. Talking about other people. Who did what? Who can be trusted? Who can't? If you've ever caught yourself mid-story about someone who isn't in the room and felt a flicker of guilt about it, stay with this, because that guilt might be aimed at the wrong target entirely. And if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe before we keep going, because where this is headed gets stranger than you'd expect. To understand why this instinct runs this deep, you have to look at something that, on the surface, looks nothing like gossip at all. Watch a group of chimpanzees for long enough, and you'll notice something that eats up a shocking share of their day. Grooming. Not because they're crawling with parasites, because sitting still, picking carefully through another animal's fur, is how primates build and hold on to trust. It's slow, it's physical, and it only ever works on one relationship at a time. That worked fine for a species whose social world stayed small. But somewhere along the way, human groups outgrew what fingers and fur could maintain. Primatologist Dunbar noticed the mismatch and proposed something that reframes everything. Language itself may have evolved, at least in part, to take grooming's place, doing the same bonding work, just fast enough to keep up with groups too large for anyone to physically touch every relationship that mattered. He even put a number on the ceiling. Somewhere around 150 stable relationships, now known as Dunbar's number, is roughly where personal, one-on-one maintenance simply runs out of hours in the day. Past that point, something has to scale. And talking, it turns out, scales beautifully. Think about the sheer arithmetic of it. Grooming one relationship properly takes real time, real attention, real physical presence. A camp of 40 people has close to 800 possible relationships between them. There simply aren't enough daylight hours to groom your way through that many bonds one at a time. Something faster had to take over, or those larger groups would have splintered apart from the inside. So picture that woman again, walking back into camp. She isn't spreading information for its own sake. She's doing, with words, exactly what a chimpanzee does with its fingers. Building a bond with whoever she tells, cementing it a little further with every shared glance of understanding. But bonding alone doesn't explain why what she saw mattered so much to share in the first place. Her camp survives on cooperation. 30, maybe 40 people, entirely dependent on each other for food, safety, everything. A man who steals from shared stores isn't just rude. In a group that small, he's a genuine threat to everyone's survival. And nobody has the time or the ability to personally watch every single person, every single day. What they need instead is a way to know who can be trusted without seeing it themselves. That's exactly what her walk back to camp accomplished. Within a day, that man's reputation had done something no confrontation ever could, quietly, safely, without a single blow exchanged. Researchers modeling this kind of social policing have run cooperation experiments where players can share information about who cheated in a previous round. The pattern holds every time. The cheater's ability to find willing partners collapses almost immediately, even though nobody punished them directly at all. The information alone did the enforcing. Here's the part worth pausing on. If this is making you think back through conversations you've had this week, that's the whole point. So drop a comment telling us the last time you did exactly what she did. Warn someone. or got warned yourself, because it happens more than you'd think. Now here's where her story gets uncomfortable, because information like this doesn't always stay accurate on its way around a camp. Say the story shifts slightly with each retelling. Say by the third or fourth person, the meat becomes an entire winter's stockpile. The quiet theft becomes something crueler than it actually was. Even in a group of 40, distortion creeps in. Now imagine that same distortion, set loose not in a camp of 40 people who mostly know each other, but across a network of millions of strangers who've never met either person involved. Researchers studying how information spreads online have found something unsettling. Claims that provoke outrage or shock travel dramatically faster than calm, accurate ones, regardless of whether they're true. Not because people prefer lying. Because outrage simply moves faster than nuance ever could. One widely cited analysis of thousands of stories spreading across social networks found that false, emotionally charged claims consistently outran accurate ones, reaching far more people in a fraction of the time. The camp had a built-in correction system, someone who actually saw it happen, someone who knew both people well enough to catch an exaggeration. Strip that away, and you're left with all of gossip's spreading power and none of its accuracy checks. So which was it, really, that night in the ancient camp? Justice, delivered without violence, or the first recorded instance of a rumor mill nobody could fully control? Tell us which side you land on in the comments, because even researchers studying this today are genuinely split. The honest answer is probably both, running at once, depending entirely on the size and accountability of the group carrying the story. Small and connected, it polices. Large and anonymous, it can just as easily become a weapon with none of the old safeguards left standing. If you've made it this far, tap that like button. It actually helps more people stumble onto this, and there's still one more twist worth waiting for. Because here's what tends to get lost under all the drama. Most of what passes between people, then and now, was never cruel at all. It was practical, checking in on someone's well-being, passing along something useful, working out, quietly, how to handle a delicate situation with someone you both care about. The vicious version is real, and it does real damage, but it was always the exception, not the rule of what this behavior actually is. That woman never set out to destroy anyone. She saw something that put her camp at risk, and she did the only thing available to her. She talked. Language stepped in exactly where grooming ran out of road, letting trust scale from one relationship at a time to dozens, then hundreds, then more than any one person could ever verify alone. It became the closest thing her people had to law. No courts, no punishment, just the quiet certainty that your reputation walked into every room slightly ahead of you. We'll never know her name, or the man's, or whether he ever fully earned his way back into the group's trust. But somewhere in the space between what she saw and what she chose to say, something got built that outlasted both of them by tens of thousands of years. A system running so quietly inside you that you've probably never once thought to question it until right now. So the next time you catch yourself deep in a conversation about someone who isn't there, you're not slipping into some shameful character flaw. You're running the same ancient software that lets strangers learn to trust each other, enough to build something bigger than any one camp ever could alone. Maybe the goal was never to stop talking about each other completely. Maybe it's just asking, every time, whether what you're about to say builds trust or quietly tears it down. The same question that woman answered without ever knowing she was answering it. If this changed the way you'll think about your next conversation, subscribe and turn on notifications, because there's a lot more of this ancient wiring still running underneath your everyday life, and we're only just getting started digging it up.